So how will King Charles's diagnosis and the return of Harry go down in the royal household? Well, joining us now is consultant psychiatrist Dr. Raj Prasad. And still with me, of course, is Emily Andrews, as you know. Dr. Raj, welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham.
Thank you.
Fascinating interplay going on between the members of the royal family, because we say, yes, of course, they're famous, they're a royal family, but they're still a family. How has this kind of dynamic been, do you think, for all of them since the announcement of the cancer?
Well, as a psychiatrist, people may be surprised to know I take a lot of referrals from cancer doctors sending me their patients.
Right.
Because the emotional impact of a cancer diagnosis is massive. And the statistics suggest up to 40% of newly diagnosed cancer patients suffer from clinical depression as a direct result.
Yeah.
So it's massive, right? And also there's a massive impact on the family dynamic. So every conflict that may have been there, and obviously there was a pretty obvious set of conflicts, begins to appear rather trivial in the face of such a massive thing as a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
So one of the things that happens is that there's a sense in which any kind of rift or argument you had before, you're meant to shelve it for the benefit of the patient at the center of this, who's got a cancer diagnosis. So it kind of changes all the kind of rifts or the arguments that happened before. And one of the problems, I think, for people like Harry is there's a sense in which, is it possible that he and Meghan invested in the idea of media attention and income from having a fight with the king or the royal family?
Yeah.
To what extent can they really continue doing that? To what extent does it start to look whiny? I've even seen extreme cases where cancer patients feel stress has caused their cancer.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, certainly
some people will be
people
thinking,
have written that today, haven't they?
yes, some people will be thinking that the stress that Harry caused the king, may have had some role in this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that doctors would necessarily agree with that, but certainly people who've been under a lot of stress and then develop a cancer diagnosis often explain it in this way. You gave me the cancer with the stress you put me under.
Absolutely right. And interestingly, that kind of takes care of perhaps the 45-minute meeting that he had with his father. But of course, the brothers don't have that same dynamic, do they? Because, they may both support their father in his time of need, but they don't need to talk to each other.
Yes, I also think geography is going to play a role here, because William's obviously in this country alongside his father, and Harry is coming and going.
Yeah.
And I think geography begins to play a big role, because Harry will begin to be increasingly sidelined. And he'll have a problem, because he can't be in this country all this time without his wife back in the US and some of the projects back in the US beginning to call him back. So I think geography begins to play a big role in this situation, where just the natural fact that William is so close geographically to his father means that he begins to be associated with the kind of rock on which the king depends, and Harry begins to be pushed further and further outside of the kind of inner circle of the royal family.
Because, Emily, I remember when they went for a walk, do you remember in Windsor, the four of them? And at the time, there was already a feud going on, and everyone said, oh, maybe this is the start of a rapprochement. But I never thought it was. I don't think there'll ever be one, do you?
Not at the moment. That's the short answer. And I certainly think for William and Kate, or Catherine, as we must now call the Princess of Wales, I think it will take a long time to mend those bridges with Harry and Meghan. We've talked a lot about Spare, about the autobiography, about what Harry had to say, Harry and Meghan had to say in that Netflix documentary about Kate and about William. She was cold. They had Harry had the fight with the dog bowl. They didn't welcome Meghan enough. This, when the four of them went down the long walk at Windsor to accept flowers after the death of the Queen, that Kate afterwards said it was one of the hardest things she'd ever done. I think she was very nervous. I think you could visibly see Meghan shaking. She also didn't know how the British public would react to her, let alone how her brother-in-law and sister-in-law would react to her. And so, yes, I think perhaps, I don't know, Dr. Rogers, time a healer, but I think it's going to take a long time to mend that particular relationship?
Well, I think the problem is, in the face of something as massive as a cancer diagnosis, all the complaints you saw in the book Spare begin to seem a bit trivial, don't they, in comparison?
To be honest, they were trivial at any time, really. I mean, the idea that he was moaning, this guy who was supposed to be a hero of the Afghan war, that he got pushed into a dog bowl and, hurt himself. He's just kind of going, really? Is that the worst you can report? So I'm with you, Raj. I think totally ridiculous, an awful lot of the whining and the moaning. And I think a lot of people saw through it, But I suppose watching, as we just have, watching the four of them walking around in Windsor, I mean, is there any forgiveness for Meghan? Was she completely unsuited to the role? Could she have been completely overwhelmed by it? Or do you think, like most people, that she just wanted something she couldn't have?
Well, a lot of people would say history is repeating itself when they think about Princess Diana. Someone signs up to join the royal family, doesn't really seem to understand what's involved, then begins to complain about the inevitable stuff that most of us thought you should have seen this coming in terms of the requirements of the job. It's not just simply that you're marrying a prince and it's like in the movies. There's a lot of stuff that's coming. Why could you not see that? Why did you not understand what you're signing up for? Of course, they'll defend themselves and say, well, it was love. You know, emotions were in play. Well, there's a lot involved in being a member of the royal family. There's a lot of duties, obligations. It's a public situation. Don't sign up for it unless you really understand what
and also a lot of people
undertaken.
who kind of ask for kind of, you know, a bit of slack for Harry and Meghan always say, oh, they're just a young couple. Well, they're not really, are they? They're not actually a young couple. I mean, they're a quite well-established couple and they're not young.
Well, no, I mean, Meghan is over 40.
I mean, you know, heaven forbid I would call that old. I mean, I would call that young-ish. But
I'd like to think that was young. I'd like to think that was young.
But they're not a young couple, is what I mean.
No, I mean, look, and
but they could be regarded as an immature couple.
They're certainly immature, no question.
Yeah, and I think, well, I certainly, Dr. Rush, would not want to marry into the royal family. I think it is obviously a centuries old.
No matter how swept off your feet.
No matter how swept off I was my feet by prince or princess.
Okay.
But I think, no, because I think it's a centuries old institution which, although it has moved with the times, I think is still steeped in the mores and the culture of ancient medieval courts, frankly, where, you know, hierarchy is still dictated by birth, order, deference, and they are medieval courts, I've always thought. You know, even though now we talk, to use that awful Palace word, that Charles and his son William are in lockstep together. Palace love that. I won't tell you later. Can you analyse that for me, please? Lockstep, what does that mean?
Well, let me ask, because we're nearly out of time, just let me ask you, Raj, before you go, the Camilla role in all of this, because obviously that's another reason why Harry and his father can't really be that friendly because of what he said about her, but presumably her support for him is the key thing at the moment.
Yes, all the evidence is that your emotional response to the cancer could even influence the prognosis quite significantly. And the emotional support of people close to you, like your wife, is very important. There's a really interesting feminine dynamic here, which is that women want the guy who's under stress to vent and talk about it, whereas the guy sometimes doesn't want to. And that women can often feel, if you're not downloading with me, they feel a bit alienated. They feel as if that's affected the closeness. So there's a lot to be negotiated between the two of them. But so far, all the evidence is, from the press reporting, is that she's enormously important in his emotional response to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, great to see both of you. Thank you very much indeed. Emily Andrews, I'm sure we'll be talking about this again. This is going to be running for a while, Dr. Raj Prasad as well.